There's a strange shift that happens in life. The very moment you stop waiting, stop chasing, and finally choose happiness for yourself, suddenly the same people who once overlooked you, who thought they could live without you, begin to crawl back, not because you needed them, but because they realize they lost what they'll never find again. There's a truth many people don't realize. Nothing hurts more than watching someone glow after you thought they'd break without you. Most people expect that when they walk away, when they abandon you, when they choose someone else over you, you'll crumble. They expect tears, sleepless nights, and desperate phone calls. But imagine the shock, the confusion, the pain on their face when they see you smiling, laughing, and living your best life. That smile becomes the sharpest weapon you can ever hold. Happiness is the ultimate revenge, not because it destroys them, but because it proves they never had the power to destroy you in the first place. See, revenge is often misunderstood. People think revenge is about payback, about shouting, about showing someone that you can hurt them the way they hurt you. But the real revenge is silent, it's graceful, it's choosing not to crumble. It's walking into a room with confidence in your step, light in your eyes, and peace in your heart. Happiness sends a message without you ever having to speak. I don't need you to complete me. I was already whole. And that message cuts deeper than anger ever could. Think about it. When you're hurting, when you're crying, when you're stuck in sadness, they feel validated. They feel powerful because they see that they mattered enough to break you. But when you're happy, when you're thriving, when your life is blooming without their presence, it robs them of that illusion. Suddenly, they realize they didn't matter as much as they thought. Suddenly, the control they once held over your emotions vanishes. Happiness is freedom, and freedom is something no one can take away once you claim it. Now, here's where it gets even more powerful. Happiness not only heals you, but it also forces them to confront their own choices. They start to wonder, how are you smiling without me? How are you doing better now than when you were with me? That thought eats away at them, because deep down everyone wants to believe they are unforgettable, that their absence would leave a permanent scar. But when you prove that you can heal, move forward, and glow brighter than ever before, you challenge the very core of their ego. And nothing wounds the ego more than being proven unnecessary. Happiness, however, isn't just about proving a point to them. It's about reclaiming your life for yourself. When you stop chasing closure, stop replaying the past, and instead start pouring energy into yourself, you attract new opportunities, better people, and deeper peace. You find joy in your own skin, in your own company. And here's the truth. People who love themselves radiate a light that others can't ignore. That's why your happiness becomes magnetic. That's why the same person who once took you for granted now suddenly wants to come back. They're drawn to the glow you built without them, but the beauty of happiness as revenge is this. It doesn't require bitterness. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to plot against them. You don't have to waste energy trying to show them. All you have to do is live. Live fully, live boldly, live joyfully, because in the end, the sweetest revenge is not proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right. Proving that no matter who leaves, no matter who betrays, no matter who doubts you, you can always rise again. And when you rise with happiness in your heart, you become untouchable. This expansion alone is about 780-820 words, with flow, repetition for rhythm, and there's something magnetic about a person who stands tall on their own. Independence has a certain glow to it that can't be faked, can't be borrowed, can't be handed over. It's the way you move when you don't rely on anyone to validate you. It's the way you smile when your joy isn't tied to someone else's presence. That kind of independence, that kind of strength, it draws people in. It makes them stop and look. Because in a world where so many are desperate for attention, desperate for approval, desperate to be chosen, the one who chooses themselves becomes unforgettable. People expect you to lean on them. They expect you to need their comfort, their approval, their support. And when you don't, it shocks them. They wonder how you're doing it, how you're surviving, how you're smiling without their hand to hold. That's the power of independence. It unsettles those who thought you couldn't stand without them. When you no longer cling, when you no longer chase, when you no longer beg, you shift the balance of power. Suddenly, the one who thought you needed them finds themselves needing you. And here's the truth. Independence is not about being cold, heartless, or shutting people out. No, it's about building your own foundation so strong that no one can shake it. It's about knowing who you are, what you want, and where you're going regardless of who stays or who leaves. When you build your life on your own 2 feet, you're not afraid of loss. You're not afraid of rejection. Because you know your worth doesn't decrease when someone walks away. That unshakable self-belief is rare, and rarity always attracts. Think about it. When was the last time you saw someone thriving on their own? Didn't it spark curiosity in you? Didn't it make you wonder what makes them so confident? How do they carry themselves like that? That's because independence radiates. It carries an energy that can't be ignored. It says, I don't need to be chosen, I already chose myself. And when people see that, they either admire you, or they realize they lost something priceless. Independence also creates respect. When you don't rely on someone to complete you, you set a standard. You send a message, if you want to be in my life, you add value, you don't define me. And that's powerful, because when people see that you're not desperate for them, when they see that you're fine without their approval, they start to treat you differently. They step more carefully. They approach with more respect. Why? Because they know your world doesn't revolve around them, and that realization makes you the prize. But the most beautiful part of independence is this. It doesn't just attract people back. It attracts the right people forward. The ones who aren't intimidated by your strength. The ones who don't want to control you, but to walk beside you. Independence filters out the weak connections, the fake love, the shallow promises. It draws in only those who see your worth and can stand strong beside you. And that, right there, is why independence is so powerful. It makes you magnetic not just to those who left, but to a whole new world of opportunities, love, and respect. There comes a point where words no longer matter. You've explained, you've argued, you've poured your heart out trying to make someone understand your worth. But here's the truth. Sometimes silence speaks louder than anything you could ever say. When you stop talking, when you stop explaining, when you stop pleading, the silence becomes deafening. That quiet is not weakness. It is power, because it tells them, you no longer have access to my energy. You no longer have the privilege of my voice. You see, words can be twisted, ignored, dismissed. But silence cannot be denied. When you choose to no longer respond, no longer react, no longer entertain their games, it creates a void. And in that void, they are left alone with their thoughts, their guilt, their regret. Silence forces them to hear the echo of their own choices. They can't hide behind your explanations anymore. They can't rely on your attention to feed their ego. Silence turns the mirror back on them, and that reflection is hard to face. The power of silence is that it confuses people who expected a reaction. They expect anger, they expect tears, they expect you to fight for them, but when you give them nothing, no words, no energy, no access. It throws them off balance. They can't figure out why you're so calm, why you've gone quiet, why you're not chasing anymore, and that confusion eats away at them more than any argument could, because silence says, I've moved on, I've outgrown this, I don't need to prove myself anymore. Silence also protects your peace. Every time you argue, every time you defend yourself, every time you fight to be understood, you drain your spirit, but silence saves that energy. It keeps your dignity intact. It allows you to walk away without losing yourself in the process. And while they sit there waiting for your reaction, waiting for your words, you're already moving forward. Your silence becomes the wall that guards your heart from being played with again. And make no mistake, silence speaks volumes in ways words never could. A blocked call says more than 1,000 text messages. A calm smile when they expect tears says more than any explanation. Your absence at the places they thought you'd be waiting says more than begging ever could. Silence is a language of strength. It tells them, you don't get to rent space in my mind anymore. You don't get the privilege of my response. And the irony is this: the less you say, the more they wonder. The more they chase the closure you no longer need. The greatest beauty of silence is that it gives you back control. Arguments put the power in their hands, but silence places all the weight on them. It makes them question, rethink, regret. And while they're busy drowning in that storm of unanswered questions, you're already at peace, walking in a new direction. That's why silence is louder than words, because words may reach their ears, but silence reaches their soul. There's one thing no one can take away from you: your growth. They might doubt you, they might leave you, they might even hope you stay the same, but growth can't be hidden. It shows in the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you carry yourself. When someone sees you after they thought you'd be broken, the change is undeniable. Your strength speaks before you do. Your confidence enters the room before you open your mouth. Growth is the loudest testimony, and it requires no announcement. Think back to who you were when they walked away. Maybe you were hurting. Maybe you were lost. Maybe you were still trying to figure out your worth. They thought that version of you was permanent. They believed you'd stay there, stuck, waiting. But what they didn't know is that pain has a way of shaping people. Struggle has a way of molding strength. And the very heartbreak that was supposed to break you became the soil for your transformation. Growth turned your scars into armor, your tears into wisdom, and your silence into focus. The beauty of growth is that it is visible even when you say nothing. You don't have to prove to them that you've changed. They can see it in the way you no longer react the way you once did. They notice it when you're no longer begging for attention, no longer chasing after crumbs of love. Growth shows up in your patience, your boundaries, your self-respect. It's the way you've learned to stand taller, even when the world tries to push you down. That's why growth is undeniable. It lives in your energy. And here's the truth: growth makes people uncomfortable, because when you grow, you no longer fit into the box they tried to keep you in. They remember the version of you that tolerated less, that settled for less, that accepted their excuses. But now you've outgrown that, and when they try to approach you the way they used to, they realize the old keys don't open new doors. That discomfort forces them to see reality. You've leveled up. And once someone has grown, there is no going back. Growth also changes the balance of power. When they left, maybe they thought they had the upper hand, but when they see the stronger, wiser, better version of you, they're forced to admit they miscalculated. They thought you'd crumble, but you built. They thought you'd fall, but you climbed. They thought you'd wait, but you moved forward. And in that moment, their pride takes a hit. Because nothing stings more than realizing you underestimated someone who became everything you thought they couldn't be. But the most powerful part of growth is this: you didn't grow for them, you grew for you. Your evolution wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about proving yourself right. It was about stepping into the version of yourself you always had the potential to be. And once that growth happens, it cannot be reversed. No matter how much they regret, no matter how much they beg, no matter how much they wish you'd shrink back into the person you once were, you won't. Because growth is undeniable, and once you taste your own strength, you'll never settle for weakness again. The day you learn to love yourself is the day the whole game changes. Because once you truly understand your own worth, you stop playing by other people's rules. You stop waiting for their validation, their approval, their attention. Self-love flips the script. It puts you in control of your own story. It teaches you that love isn't something you have to beg for. It's something you already carry inside. And when that realization takes root, you become unstoppable. Here's the truth: most people lose themselves chasing someone else's love. They pour so much into others that they forget to pour into themselves. They confuse attention with affection, validation with value. But when you find self-love, you stop confusing the two. You stop accepting half-effort. You stop settling for someone who can't see what you already know to be true, that you are enough as you are. And once you embrace that truth, you raise the standard. No one can give you less than what you give yourself. Self-love is not arrogance. It's not pride. It's not pretending you're perfect. No, self-love is understanding your flaws, your scars, your mistakes, and still saying, I am worthy. It's choosing to forgive yourself for the past and believe in yourself for the future. Self-love creates a foundation so strong that when someone tries to shake it, you don't fall apart. When they try to take their love away, you don't crumble, because you never relied on them to complete you. You already completed yourself, and here's where it gets powerful. When you love yourself, you become less available for games. The things that used to trigger you don't anymore. The treatment you used to tolerate no longer gets a pass. Why? Because self-love teaches you boundaries. It teaches you to walk away when respect is missing. It teaches you to say no when your peace is threatened, and boundaries are attractive, because they show that you value yourself enough not to accept less than what you deserve. People will notice the difference. The same person who once thought you'd beg for their attention suddenly realizes you're no longer chasing. The same one who thought you'd never leave sees you thriving without them. That shift, that glow, that confidence, it's undeniable, and it comes from one source: self-love. Because when you love yourself, you stop being afraid of losing anyone. The only loss that matters is losing yourself, and you've already promised never to let that happen again. But the most beautiful part of self-love is the peace it brings. You stop looking outward for what you've already found inward. You stop comparing your journey to anyone else's. You stop needing constant reassurance because you've built your own. And when you walk in that kind of peace, you attract better people, better opportunities, better energy. You stop surviving and start thriving. That's why self-love changes the game. It makes you untouchable. Because when you love yourself fully, no one can ever use your own heart against you again. Life has a strange irony to it. The very moment you stop needing someone, stop chasing them, stop waiting for them, that's the moment they suddenly wake up. When you no longer want them, that's when they want you most. Because the truth is, people often take for granted what is always available. They assume your love will always be there, your attention will always be waiting, your presence will always be guaranteed. But when you take that away, when you finally close the door, they feel the loss in a way that no words could ever explain. See, desire grows in absence. When you were chasing, when you were calling, when you were giving, they didn't feel the need to move. They had no urgency because you were right there. But the moment you go silent, the moment you stop showing up, the moment you stop giving, that's when the panic sets in. Suddenly, they're the ones doing the chasing. Suddenly, they're the ones replaying memories, wondering why you're not around. What they ignored when they had it, they now crave because it's gone. And here's the truth most people never admit. Sometimes they don't actually miss you at first. They miss the version of themselves they were when they had access to you. They miss the comfort, the validation, the reassurance your presence gave them. They miss knowing you'd pick up the phone, knowing you'd forgive them, knowing you'd always be there. But when you no longer want them, they're forced to realize it wasn't just about what you gave. It was about who you are. And that realization hits harder than anything else. When you no longer want them, it flips the balance of power. For so long, they held the upper hand. They were the prize you were chasing. They were the one you thought you couldn't live without. But the moment you stop wanting them, the roles reverse. You become the one who's rare, the one who's valuable, the one who's free. And nothing terrifies someone more than realizing they've lost the attention of the very person who once gave it freely. That shift forces them to confront a reality they never imagined. They're no longer in control. But here's the most important part. By the time they want you most, you've already grown beyond them. You've already healed. You've already built yourself up. You've already learned to love yourself without their approval. And that's the real victory. Because even though they may come back begging, even though they may finally see your worth, you're no longer in the same place. You don't crave their attention the way you once did. You don't need their validation anymore. The very thing they want is the very thing you've outgrown, the version of you that lived for them. And that's the ultimate irony of life. When you no longer want them, they want you most. But by then, you've realized something greater, that your worth was never tied to their desire in the first place. You don't need them chasing you. You don't need them begging you. Because the moment you stopped wanting them, you discovered something far more powerful. You only ever needed yourself. So let this be your reminder. Your happiness is your strength. Your independence is your crown. Your silence is your weapon. Your growth is your proof, your self. Love is your shield, and your freedom is your power. You don't need to chase. You don't need to beg. You don't need to wait for anyone to finally see your worth. Because the truth is, the moment you choose yourself, the moment you rise without them, the moment you stop wanting what once hurt you, everything changes. They may beg back, they may realize too late, they may finally see the value they overlooked, but by then you'll already know the truth. You were never waiting for them, you were always waiting for you. And now that you've found yourself, you'll never lose again.